So today we're going to continue on with factoring trinomials. Today, what we're going to see is when the number in front of x squared is no longer equal to 1. It's going to be a number other than 1. These are the more challenging trinomials that we're going to have to factor. Now, what I'm going to show you are two options. There are other techniques out there. Whichever technique you choose to use, you have to show work for it. The first option is trial and error. So if you're going to do trial and error, you would have to list the factors of the first term. So I list all the ways to multiply to get a 2x squared. And there's only one. It's going to be 1x times 2x. Then you would list all the factors of the last term, the negative 15. Now, the factors of negative 15 will be negative 1 times positive 15, or positive 1 times negative 15, negative 3 times positive 5, or positive 3 times negative 5. Now what you need to do is figure out which one of these four combinations are going to work with this combination in order to FOIL back to give you the original problem. So for example, you'll set up your binomials. I'm going to take the factors of the green and I'm going to put them here. So 1x, 2x. It doesn't matter which way you put them in. Now, out of the four options that are in yellow, I need to start placing them in there and then foiling it till I find the one that works. So if you're going to use this method, you're going to show me the factors and then you're going to show me the FOIL that gave you the answer. So for example, the one that's going to work here is going to be this one. So if I put a positive 3 and a negative 5, and it matters where you put the 3 and the negative 5. And this is how you're going to find out if you placed it appropriately, by foiling it. So when you do first, you get 2x squared. When you do the outer, negative 5x. When you do the inside, 6x. And then finally, when you do the last, the negative 15. And then you'll add the middles. And it did go back to the original. So because it FOILs back, the answer to this problem is the x plus 3 times the 2x minus 5. And it doesn't matter if you write it as 2x minus 5 and then the x plus 3. So let's say you decided I'm going to put it in as negative 3 and positive 5. You want to set it up this way? Okay, so let's FOIL it. If it doesn't go back to my original, then you've done something wrong. So the first gives me 2x squared. Outer gives me positive 5x. Inner gives me negative 6x. And then the last will give me the negative 15 I need. But notice when you add the middles, you get a negative 1x. And I needed a positive x. So this is where foiling it is going to save your answer. You have to FOIL it if you're guessing and testing, because you can't just put them in randomly. Only one of the combinations will work. So this is a fail. So even if you do the next technique I'm teaching you, once you think you have the binomials, my advice to you is when you take this quiz next week, FOIL the binomial. If it doesn't go back to the original, you've done something wrong and you need to start all over again. Okay, so this is the method that I am going to teach. It's option 2, and it's going to be called factor by grouping. Now, again, there are other techniques out there other than factor by grouping and guess and test. Whatever method you're choosing to use that your Algebra 1 teacher taught you is fine with me. You just have to show the work.
Pardon the interruption.
Okay, so option 2, here are the steps. You're going to first multiply the first and the last two terms. So here we go. 2x squared times negative 15 gives me negative 30x squared. These are going to be the factors that I'm looking for. And then I need to figure out of these factors, which one is going to sum to the middle term. So I'm looking for which ones are going to add to give me a 1x. Then I'm going to replace the middle term with those two factors I found and turn it into a 4-term polynomial and factor by grouping. So here we go. Now, when that last term, that c, is negative, this is a clue that my signs are going to be opposite. I'm going to have one factor with a positive and one factor with a negative. So the bigger factor is going to have the signs of the middle. So notice my middle term is positive. So when I list my factors here, it's going to be 1 and 30. And my bigger factor is going to be positive. So it'll be negative 1 times positive 30x. When I multiply that, I get the negative 30x squared I need. But when I add it, I get 29x. Because negative 1 plus 30 is 29. This one does not work. It did not give me a sum of 1. All right, that one didn't work. Let's try the next one. I can do 2x times negative 2x times positive 15x. That gives me the negative 30x squared I need, but when I add them, I get 13x. That one doesn't work. This one, negative 3x times positive 10x will give me 30x squared. But when I add them, I still don't get the one I need. So then finally, negative 5x times 6x, this is the combination that I need to factor it. Now, a little hint here. Whenever the sum you're looking for, that middle term is a 1, that should be a clue that the factors you are looking for are going to be side by side. They're going to be next to each other. So notice 5 and 6 were next to each other, but one had to be negative. All right, so now that we've found the factors, unlike yesterday, we don't put those directly into the binomials. We need to turn this into a 4-term polynomial and then factor by grouping. So now I'm going to take my original problem. I rewrite the first term, the 2x squared. I'm now replacing the middle with these two factors I just found. It doesn't matter if I put the negative 5 first and the positive 6 second, or vice versa. I'll actually show you both ways. So now all I've done is replace the middle with the two factors I found. The first term and the last term are the same. Now I turn it into groups. So I'm going to make a group of the first two and then a group of the last two terms. I need to find the greatest common factor of my purple group. So between 2x squared and 5x, my greatest common factor is going to be 1x, or just x. I like to write the GCF underneath to give me the visual of what I'm dividing by. So the x goes on the outside. 2x squared divided by x is just 2x. 5x divided by x is just 5. I now need to look for the greatest common factor between 6x and 15, and that GCF is going to be a 3. I write the GCF there. It's a positive 3. And now I need to divide. 6x divided by 3 is 2x. 15 divided by 3 is 5. When you factor by grouping, the results of your division, this and this, have to match. It has to be the same. If it's not, then you've either divided wrong pulled out a wrong GCF, or it just can't be factored. So now you'll write the 2x minus 5, and then take the two GCFs that you divided by, and they become the second binomial. And there is your factored trinomial. My advice to you is after you think you have your binomials, FOIL it. If it does not go back to the original, you've done something wrong. So let's try it. So first, 2x squared. Outside, 6x. Inside, negative 5x. Last, negative 15. When you go to add them in the middle, you do get the 1x you were looking for. So it did go back to my original. So my correct answer is the 2x minus 5 times the x plus 3. You can also write the x plus 3 first, and then the 2x minus 5 second. Doesn't matter the order you write them. Correct answer is either this or these. How did I get that? Yeah. Okay, so the way that you get that is you take what now has become a GCF, what you got when you divided, that gets written as a binomial. And then the two GCFs that you divided by, the x and the 3, that becomes the second binomial. Now, just to show you, it wouldn't have mattered if in this step where you're plugging in the negative 5x and the 6x, it wouldn't have mattered if you put the 6x first and the negative 5 second. It doesn't matter. I'm going to show you get the same answer either way. So instead of putting the negative 5 first, if you do it this way, purple group, blue group, purple group GCF is now 2x. When you divide, you get x plus 3. Now, for the blue group, notice what happens if I pull out only a positive 5 GCF. Watch what will happen here. I end up getting a negative x minus 3. When you factor by grouping, these two need to look the same. If they don't, you either need to go back and rethink your GCF. The better GCF, which will actually work, is actually a negative 5, not a positive 5. So this is still x plus 3. But now if you divide by a negative 5 GCF, then it goes to make it identical. And then this now x plus 3 technically becomes the GCF of the problem. So you write that down, but then you take the two GCFs you just divided by, and that becomes the second binomial. So really it's what's underneath here, and you put it together. Again, FOIL it. If it doesn't FOIL back, either you've placed it wrong or you have the wrong signs. Here's the next one. Now, honestly, this one is probably easy enough where you could probably guess and test, because 2x squared only has 1 times 2, and 3 only has 1 times 3. So guessing and testing on this one, you probably could have gotten away with just doing 2 FOIL problems if you didn't get it right the first time. But I'm going to, again, still do the grouping. So I'm going to multiply the beginning and the end, and that's going to give me 6x squared. So I'm looking for those factors that will sum to give me negative 5x. So my factors of positive 6x squared, this tells me my signs have to be the same, and they're both going to have the negative, because that's the sign of the middle. So it's going to be negative 1x times 6x. That'll give me the positive 6x squared I need. But when I add that, I get negative 7x. So this one doesn't work. The next factors of positive 6x squared are going to be negative 2 and negative 3. When I add that, I get the negative 5. Everybody good? So now, this replaces the middle term here. We need to turn it into a 4-term polynomial. These don't automatically go into the binomials. So I get 2x squared, replace the -5 with the 2 factors you just found, and then rewrite that last term. Now we make our groups. Now it wouldn't have mattered if you put the -3x first or the -2, you will still get the same answer. It still works either way. So if I make my groups, I'll make a yellow group and let's see, a white group so it shows up. So my greatest common factor of yellow is 2x. Divide it and I get x minus 1. My greatest common factor of the white group, if I pull out a +3, my signs aren't going to be good. So I'm going to pull out a -3 GCF. And when I divide -3x by -3, I get +x. And then -3 divided, or +3 divided by -3 is -1. I got the same thing. So that becomes my first binomial. And then you take the 2 GCFs, you just divide it by, and that becomes the second binomial. And again, FOIL it. Make sure it's going back to the original. If it doesn't, you've done something wrong. You can also write it with the 2x minus 3 first, and then the x minus 1 second. Try the next one. All right, so again, I'm going to factor by grouping. You could guess and test, but again, I want to see all the FOIL of the trial and error if you guess and test. So I'm going to multiply beginning and end. So I'm going to be listing the factors of -54x squared, and I'm getting -54 by multiplying 2x squared times the -27, the first and the last. So this is the factors I'm looking for, but they need to be able to add to the -3x. So when that last term is negative, that tells me the signs on my factors are opposite, one positive, one negative, and the sign of the bigger factor is the sign of the middle. So let's start it. So 1x times 54, but the bigger factor is the negative, so my 54 is the negative. When I multiply those two, I do get the -54x squared. But when I add them, I do not get the 3, I get -53. So I got to keep trying. So now let's do the 2x. That was what we originally multiplied. But this gives me -25. Not what I need. Keep going. So 3x times -18x. This will give me -15x. 3x times -18 doesn't work. One more. 4 doesn't work. Let's try 5 doesn't work, but 6 does. So 6x times -9x will give me the -54x squared. And when I add them, this is my magical combination. So this is what I need to replace that middle term with, these two numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite the 2x squared, replace the -3x with the two numbers I just found. And again, the order that you place the 6x and the -9 does not matter. You will get the same answer either way. So now that I found the two that will give me the middle, make your groups. So I'll do a red group and a purple group. And again, my greatest common factor of the red is going to be a 2x. So divide. My greatest common factor of the purple group, if you pull out a +9, the signs aren't going to be correct. So my GCF is actually going to be a -9. So I end up with the x plus 3 as the result of the division. And now that we have the same here, that's your first binomial. And then you put the two GCFs that you divided by in your second binomial. Again, next week on the quiz, if you have time to go back and FOIL these, I highly recommend you FOIL it. If it does not go back to the original problem, you've done something wrong. So again, instead of guessing and testing, I am going to multiply the beginning and the end. So I'm multiplying 8x squared times 18. This gives me 144x squared. These are the factors that I'm looking for that are going to sum to 51x. Notice this time it's positive, positive. So both of my signs will be positive. So 1x times 144x will give me the 144x squared. But when I add it, it's 145x. Not what I need. Let's try 2. 2 times 72 will give me the 144 I need. When I add them, it's 74. Still not 51. Now, when I do 3x times 48x, you get the 51 that you need. Now, you're not using calculators, so you're just going to have to do the division on your scratch paper. Divide it by 2, divide it by 3, until you find it. Try to do a nice organized list. Obviously, if you can look at the sum you're trying to get, and then maybe you can guess of where you need to check. But again, don't always overlook the obvious, that very first one. Sometimes it's what you need. Now, one other thing that we're going to talk about tomorrow is whenever you factor a problem, you should always look for a greatest common factor first before you even start. But that'll come tomorrow. The only GCF we're going to pull out today is going to be a -1, and we're going to do that on the next problem. But let's finish this one up. So now these are going to be the numbers that I replace for my 51. So I rewrite the 8x squared. I'm replacing the 51 with the 3x and the 48. And again, it doesn't matter the order you put them in. You'll get the same answer either way. And then rewrite the 18. So now I'm going to make my groups. I'll do a yellow group and a green group. And now my GCF of the yellow group is going to be just an x. So this gives me 8x plus 3. My GCF of the green group is going to be 6. So once I divide, notice you get the same thing here. So the 8x plus 3 is the first binomial. And then the second binomial is the two GCFs. So the x plus 6. And again, FOIL it, make sure it's going back. Now, in the homework tonight, if your trinomial has a negative x squared, a negative number in front of x squared, Big Ideas wants you to factor out a -1 first. So the first thing you're going to do is divide all of these by -1. And then you're left with 6x squared minus 17x minus 3. Now, when you go to enter this answer in Big Ideas, you're not going to enter it as a -1, just put a negative sign. And I'm going to show you how to enter it once we finish up and find our factors. So now, I need to multiply. Now I've got to do the same thing I've been doing. Multiply the first and the last. I'm looking for factors of -18x squared that will sum to give me -17x. And this is the one that's the obvious. Signs are different. Bigger number will be the negative. And notice the very first one gives us what we need. So now, don't forget about the GCF here. This -1 needs to stay in the front. Rewrite the 6x squared. Replace the 17 with the two numbers you just found. And again, it doesn't matter the order to put them in. And then rewrite the -3. All right, so now I can make my groups. So I'm going to make a blue group and a purple group. My greatest common factor of blue is going to be 6. So now, once I divide it, I get x minus 3. My greatest common factor of purple is actually just 1. And I need to show that GCF is a 1. And then when you divide anything by 1, it's just itself. And now we'll make our binomials. We still have this negative sign out front, but then you'll take the x minus 3, so the thing that was the same, and then take the two GCFs. And this was actually a 6x here. So then it's 6x plus 1. And this is how you're going to enter it in big ideas with the negative sign in front that you divided out originally. So make sure when you're doing the homework tonight, if your first term has got a negative number in front of x squared, divide everything by -1 first. Now, if you wanted to FOIL this, again, remember multiplication is commutative. You can either multiply -1 times the x minus 3, or FOIL these and then distribute the -1. Either way, if you needed to check it. If you wanted to check this, you could either distribute the -1 and make it a negative x plus 3, and then now FOIL this, or you could have FOILed these two and then distribute the -1. All right, so the next one, same thing. We're going to multiply beginning and end. So we're looking for factors of 60x squared. That will sum to be 19x. So 1x, the signs are the same. So 1 times 60 gives me 61x, not what I need. 2 times 30 gives me 32, not what I need. 3 times 20 gives me 23, not what I need. Finally, 4 times 15 gives me the 19x that I need. So again, rewrite the 6x squared, replace the 19 with the two numbers you just found. And again, it doesn't matter the order you put them in, and then rewrite the last term. Make your groups. So I'll make a black group here and a green group. My greatest common factor of the black group is going to be 2x. Once you divide, you get 3x plus 2. My greatest common factor of the green group will be 5. Divide 3x plus 2. You're going to take the 3x plus 2, which is the same on both after the division, and then take the two GCFs, the 2x and the 5. And that becomes the binomials that factor that trinomial. And again, the order that you write them down doesn't matter. Next one, we're doing exactly the same thing. You're going to go ahead and multiply. So we're looking for factors of 3x squared times -8x, which will give us -24x squared. That will sum to give me -2x. So if I start my organized list here, again, the signs need to be different, and the bigger number will be the negative. So 1x times -24x. When I add those, I get -23x. Then if I do 2x times negative 12x, I get negative 10x, not what I need. 3x times negative 8x, this gives me negative 5x, still not what I need. And finally, 4x times negative 6x gives me the negative 2 that I need. So if I go ahead and rewrite my problem, the 3x squared stays the same. We're replacing the middle, negative 2x, with the two factors we just found. Doesn't matter the order you place them. I'll put the negative 6 first and then the positive 4. And then rewrite the last term, the negative 8. Make your groups. And then we're going to look for a greatest common factor of the blue group. It'll be 3x. Divide, and you get x minus 2. GCF of purple will be 4. And now, notice we have the same here. So that's our first binomial. And then now take the two GCFs you just divided by, and that becomes the second binomial. And again, the order that you write them doesn't matter. And again, remember, you can FOIL to check. 2 more examples and we're done. Just more of the same. So again, we're going to multiply beginning and end. This is going to give me 18x squared. These are the factors I'm looking for. That will sum to give me 11x. So we have 1x, and the signs are the same. So 1x times 18x gives me 19x, not what I'm looking for. 2x times 9x gives me 11x. That's the combination I need. So again, rewrite the first term. Replace the middle here with the two factors we just found. And again, the order that you place them doesn't matter. Make your groups. So let me make a black group here. And let's just do a green group. So the black group, my greatest common factor is 2x. Divide. I end up with 3x plus 1. GCF of green will be 3. Divide. And now take what's the same, the 3x plus 1. And then take the two GCFs and group those together. And you're done. One last example. Again, we're going to multiply. I get negative 24x squared. These are the factors I'm looking for. That will sum to give me the middle. And this one is that obvious first one. Signs are different because it's a negative 24. And the sign in the middle is positive. So this tells me my bigger factor, the 24x, is going to be positive. Add them, and I get the 23x I was looking for. So again, rewrite the 4x squared. Replace the middle with these two factors. Again, it doesn't matter the order that you place them. You will get the same answer either way. Make your groups. My greatest common factor of green is just x. Divide. My greatest common factor of the black group will be 6. Divide. And again, we have the same. So rewrite that, the 4x minus 1. And again, take the two GCFs, and that becomes the second binomial. Again, always remember, you can FOIL all of the answers that you get. If it doesn't go back to the original, you've done something wrong. Also remember, if your problem, for example, has a negative number in front of x squared, remember to divide all three terms by -1 and factor out that -1 to begin with. And then in your final answer, you will have a negative sign outside of the two binomials. So that is it for day 2 of the factoring trinomials.